compassion when my soul's in need. I find compassion for friends and enemies. My own compassion is where my spirit breathes.
Live from Santa Barbara, welcome to Compassionate Connection. I'm your hostess, Gigi Amor. The purpose of our show is to share with you how to connect compassionately within ourselves and with others. When we gain the knowledge of the language of peace, of compassion, we can transform and enrich our lives and our relationships and have a more wonderful, enjoyable world. Now tonight I am so excited. We're going to be getting into exploring something with our very special guest, Susan Allan. Thank you for returning and daring to be with us and sharing your knowledge of how to go about this.
Yes, my pleasure.
We love this information, Susan. And tonight we're going to be exploring something fascinating, and this is about the Peter Pan agreement for couples. So this is something very enticing. And now I will tell you a bit about Susan Allan. She is the founder of the Marriage Forum, a nonprofit corporation that works with individuals, couples and families and corporations to create the most peaceful and cooperative relationship possible. She is a dating specialist, a marriage coach, and she can also marry you. Susan is a divorce coach and a certified mediator, a certified Herman brain dominance trainer, and life coach, and so much more. Susan has worked with everyone from celebrities to prisoners in California's Merit program, from Harvard MBAs to those dealing with addiction and complicated diagnosis. Susan has been seen on Fox News and on hundreds of television and radio shows, demonstrating the results we can create when we transform the way we think, listen, and act, and focus on solutions instead of on problems. Also, Susan offers a complimentary 1-hour private telephone session so that everyone can indeed transform their lives. What a gift, Susan. Thank you. Now, a bit about what's going on. Susan has been responsible for many clients, creating loving relationships, marrying, developing long-term, joyous relationships, having children, and she leads them into peaceful reconciliation if there is a challenge in the relationship. Tonight's show, it will focus on one of the many confusions that people have in finding a life partner. When the male enjoys remaining dependent on a woman, just Peter Pan and all the lost boys relied on Wendy. And tonight, Susan will provide us with the skills and tools to solve this old age issue. And I am thrilled to explore this with you, Susan. Now, I'm curious if you would explain to us exactly what is the Peter Pan and Wendy dynamic.
Well, if you think back on the book or the play that James Barrie wrote, then you know that Peter Pan was this miraculous, magical little boy, and he had lost his shadow, and he came in through the window of the Darling family townhouse in London, and Wendy helped him sew the shadow back on, and then he took Wendy and her 2 brothers to Never Never Land. So most of us have grown up with this story, and it's a magical story because it's this magical boy who appears out of nowhere, and then it's a new dream fantasy life for Wendy and the two brothers. But what's interesting in the dynamic between Peter and Wendy is she was the little mother. She sewed, she cooked, she took care of them, even though she probably was no more than 11 or 12 herself. And of course, Peter was the perennial teenager, the perennial young boy.
Thank you, Susan. Now, going further into this, I know that we've all heard about Peter Pan, one of the most famous children's books. And what is the message that we have to share that Peter Pan went through? What's that message for adults today?
Well, if the relationship you enter into has that particular dynamic, the one partner, we won't even say the boy, but the Peter Pan character is charming and whimsical and fun-loving and adventuresome, you're most likely going to be left doing the sewing and the darning. So if you don't want to play that role, if you don't want to be the one who is keeping everybody's act together, you know, in this day and age, it's the person who pays the bills, the person who gets the kids to school, the person who may also earn more of the money or most of the money or even all the money. So if you don't want to be left with all the practical responsibilities, then you need to know from the very beginning that a guy who is like Peter Pan is not the guy for you, or a woman who's like Peter Pan is not the woman for you.
Well, that's very clear. Getting some insight before you commit. Now,
a lot of insight.
maybe some mediation beforehand,
that's
right?
Yeah, serious insight.
Thank you, Susan. Well, I know that you saw the Broadway, let's say the Broadway play when you were 4 years old. And I'm curious, how has this message stayed with you and how it impacted you?
Well, one of the benefits of having seen the play is Mary Martin, who was obviously a woman, played Peter Pan. So I had no fascination of growing up, you know, from 4 years old and meeting Peter Pan. I didn't have that. Now, how it happened anyway that I ended up with so many boyfriends who were charming and whimsical and fascinating and creative, and I was left doing the darning, I don't know, because I was 4, and the story must have had more of an impact on me than the actual reality of seeing a guy playing the role, because we don't have anybody but women playing the role of Peter Pan in America, it's always been like that. But for those of you who've just maybe seen the cartoon, the Disney cartoon, well, Peter Pan was clearly a little boy. And in many ways, he is irresistible. He is captivating and irresistible. And that's where you have to be really careful. Because if you're showing fairy tales to your children, we talked about Cinderella 2 weeks ago, now we're talking about Peter Pan and Wendy, these things don't go away. As my friend Andrea Marcovici, the singer, says, these are the stories that create disaster and tragedy in, she laughs and says, in her life and the lives of so many women. I mean, it can be true.
So this is really a reality check once again. And that's what I appreciate about you sharing with us all the time, underneath it all. Okay, so now the subtitle of Peter Pan is the boy who would never grow up.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, is that really the whole story?
Well, yeah, I mean, you've met these guys, you've met them, you've dated them, some of you've married them, and many of you have told me about how miserable the experience was. And I'm saying, but these were charming boys. Charming boys. One of the many answers I give when people say, why don't you have children? Why didn't you have children? And sometimes I'm serious about all the different reasons, but a lot of times I say, if I'd ever fallen in love with a guy who didn't need a mother, who would have been capable to be a real father, I probably would have had children. But since I never fell in love with guys like that, I fell in love with guys who were much too Peter Pan-ish. And you're not going to do well if you have a child with a husband or a father like Peter Pan, are you? I mean, it's not a good idea.
So this is really bringing up an awareness of what you need to consider before you do make a commitment. I really appreciate that. Now, what is Wendy's part in this Peter Pan and Wendy dynamic? And would you term this as an enabler to describe her?
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're using psychotherapeutic terminology, there's no question. Because if you're doing all the things for Peter, then you're going to wake up one day as Wendy did, and she wanted to go home, and she went home. You know, she'd had enough, and, you know, they ended up back in the nursery, and then if you remember the end of the story, then Peter goes back to Neverland, or maybe he never left, I can't recall, and then he ends up in the window sometime later, and he thinks the little girl in the bed is actually Wendy. In fact, it's Wendy's child, it's her daughter. And he has a conversation with Wendy's daughter. And that's where you get, you know, like chills. This gives me chills even now, because how many of the men that I dated who wouldn't grow up with me wouldn't grow up with the next woman, and wouldn't grow up with the next woman, and the next woman, and the next woman. And, you know, there was Alexis dying in his 70s, and he had never grown up. And he had serious, serious problems because of it. I mean, here's a guy who died alone when there had been so many of us madly in love with this guy all of his life. And by the time I had just been thoroughly disgusted and left, and then the woman after me left, and then the final woman left when he was dying. So that's a pretty dramatic statement. You know, I was stunned when I heard that. So that's a really terrible death. And at some point, it's all about growing up, facing your responsibilities, being able to care about other people enough. And that, of course, one of the things about Peter Pan, and I'll read this for you, the line is so great. This is from Wikipedia, if you want to read more about it. They're talking about Tinkerbell. You remember the little magical fairy who was just shown as a light on the stage. It is hinted later that Tinkerbell may have had romantic feelings for Peter, but he doesn't return them, as he is completely oblivious of other people's feelings. We love that line.
Yeah, how sad it is.
I just love it.
Oh, unfortunately, they sometimes aren't even aware that they lost the best thing, right? They never
Well, they're
admit
oblivious,
it.
means they're not aware.
Exactly.
They're never aware. That's right.
Thank you for...
Oblivious is such a great, great, word here, because you can't judge someone who's oblivious. You can't criticize someone who's oblivious. You just have to accept someone who is oblivious, and if you're smart, move on.
Thank you. So there you go, the facts, and move on quickly.
Yes, well, you're still old enough to walk without a walker.
Good point. Okay, well, let's explore this. When you use the Herman brain model, is there a way to understand that Peter Pan personality and the Wendy one?
Absolutely. Fred, if you put the Herman model up for a minute, then I'll be able to explain something which is really fascinating. The description of Peter, which I'm really fascinated by, is of a very spiritual being. It says, Peter's ability to imagine things into existence, such as food, though this ability plays a more central role in one of the other books, he also creates imaginary windows and doors as a kind of physical metaphor for ignoring or shunning his companions. That, again, is exactly what the upper right brain person does under stress, withdraws or stone walls. So, exactly. And then finally, he is said to be able to feel danger when it is near. So these are magical qualities. Thank you, Fred. Now with Wendy, Wendy is very much like every mother of a lot of children that you'll ever meet, which is a lower-brained person. So Wendy is very warm, very connecting, very loving, very nurturing to both her brothers and also to Peter. And she's also very organized, and she plans, and she can get things done, which is the lower left brain. And the only thing that troubles me about Wikipedia They don't talk about my favorite character, which was Nana the dog. Because the dog in Peter Pan in the play was this fantastic English sheepdog who was actually the nanny for the Darling children. And it was, well, if you want a joyous experience, find Peter Pan playing somewhere in a theater and see it, because the dog is amazing. Yeah, very cute.
Very powerful dog, and
Yes.
we know they're smart. Well, thank you, Susan. Let's explore when Wendy or any woman decides to have their own adventure with Peter Pan, or any man. What part of the decision does the woman usually ignore?
Well, what I keep finding, women who'll have a child with a perpetual teenager. So if she picks a partner who's a perpetual teenager and she doesn't realize, she's oblivious to his obliviousness. So it's a vicious cycle, and then she ends up very quickly, usually, as a single mom. And either she's trying to get child support from him and he's missing in action somewhere, or she's trying to get child support and he just doesn't have a job, or he doesn't have a career, or she doesn't know where he is, or he changes addresses, or he, for one reason or another, isn't what she thought he would become, because a lot of women think that when someone becomes a father, that will change him. Now, women, from the minute women become pregnant, they have a different brain chemistry, a different biochemistry. We're different when that happens. Men don't go through any of that. So the idea that a man is going to become a different person, and I've had a client who went through that fantasy that she told, and we had to work very, very hard to keep the father of the child engaged. She succeeded with that. But it wasn't the way she expected, that, suddenly he would, just be excited. And you just have to look at the facts. As Gigi says, it's a reality check.
So in the particular case where you were able to help and assist them, at least it could make a difference.
Yes, I was able to teach her how to motivate him as much as he could be motivated, but at the same time she has a big job, she makes a lot of money, she has a great home, she's got a supportive family, there's a daycare center attached to her company, and she makes enough money that she can have a nanny full-time. So she can do whatever she wants. She doesn't have the concerns that so many single moms have, because she's got the support from her family, she's got the support and daycare from her company, and she's got the support in terms of money.
The perfect situation.
Yeah, so she can have a baby with Peter Pan if she wants to. That's fine.
Okay. Oh, I like this.
And he's a lovely guy. I don't mean to say it is. He's a lovely guy. But there's no way that she would have been rational and practical if she assumed that he was going to do all sorts of things. Now, he's doing things, and he may continue to do things, but you can't assume it. You can't count on it. It's different.
And a very common situation.
Mm-hmm.
This is very important. Well, now I'm curious, have you seen some marriages, long-term relationships with a Peter Pan man and a Wendy woman, and what usually is the outcome for their family?
I find that if they do not have children, it goes pretty well, as long as the woman either has a lot of money or makes a lot of money. So as long as money is not a problem and money is not an issue, and as long as there are no small children who need safety and need to be protected, and as long as Peter can continue to be the child or the teenager in the family, getting that kind of unconditional love and attention and also a lot of freedom, then you're okay. But as soon as you have a pet or a child, you're going to have certain expectations that this man is going to step up to the plate, and that's not this character. That's not what it's about.
I like that. So don't set yourself up for that big
Exactly.
disappointment.
No, don't. Mm-mm.
Now, I know that this is a lengthy question, the role of men and women in society is very different from 1904 when James A.M. Barrie wrote the play, and 1911 he turned Peter Pan into a book. Are there female Peter Pans now, and are there males now who do behave like Wendy.
Yes, absolutely. House husbands. So there are a lot of women today who are very satisfied to be the breadwinners. They're very ambitious. They have big careers, and they're perfectly happy to have the guy come along for the ride. In fact, my first husband was very much like that. I started a company, and I brought him into the company, and I was really the dynamic one in most of the different things in my first marriage, which is interesting because I also, as I said, I was in a relationship, more than one, with a guy who was absolutely very Peter Pan, a financially successful and very talented guy, but his personality was Peter Pan. So yeah, I mean, you can have many different realities that you feel comfortable with. You can try them on for size in your life. The only thing that's really important is don't kid yourself. Don't kid yourself. Because the parenting part of the equation is what I saw again and again was a disaster. Because the man I'm talking about who's deceased, his former wife had 2 children when they were very young, and he was an impossible father and didn't speak to his children for like 30 years. And they resented him till the minute of his death and beyond. It was a terrible, terrible scene for everybody. My first husband, who was very Peter Panish himself, someone wanted him to be the father of her child, and this was before I was with him, and I taught him exactly what to say to her so she would smell the coffee and find somebody else, because he wasn't that guy. And she did. She got the message and she moved, into another direction. Yeah, because you can't have 2 children at the same time, and that's what women find so upsetting and offensive. They think they really want the child, but as soon as the child is 5 minutes old, now they're starting to complain to me, if they're my clients, well, I've got these 2 kids, what do I do? Well, the time to obviously avoid it is before you have the child, by realizing who your husband is and who your husband is not.
I have heard that very common experience.
And an indicator is, if you've heard these horrible stories, and believe me, I've worked with enough of them, where the father becomes a dad and within days or weeks he's having an affair. Because you, the mom, are giving all the attention to a newborn baby, as you must. If the newborn baby is going to survive, one of you has to give your full-time attention to that baby, certainly for a number of months, and then some other child care person has to do it. If you're still putting all your attention on your Peter Pan husband, then that child is going to be in real distress. And that's when the husband goes off and has an affair. So know that these are scenarios I've seen many, many times. Please call me if you have a question. And I'm not ever going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to tell you what I've seen. And then you make the choice for yourself.
At least you don't go in with those blinders on,
Exactly.
so you're aware of what could be going
Precisely.
on ahead of time. That's knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Now, is there a Peter Pan personality that women can look for so that they really can avoid this Peter Pan relationship?
Yeah, if he's too charming, take stock and really consider, are you looking for a charming boyfriend or are you looking for a stable grown-up husband? If you're looking for a charming boyfriend, enjoy him as that. But if you're looking for a stable husband, someone you can count on, then you got to find that. That's the man for you, and that man has nothing to do with Peter Pan. Nothing at all, except it might be a book he reads to your children one day.
I like that. Okay, well, how about if we do agree that Peter Pan often is self-centered? Is there any positive personality trait to that?
Well, let's see. It says here that Peter is mainly an exaggerated stereotype of a boastful and careless boy. Not too attractive, right? He's quick to point out how great he is, even when such claims are questionable. In the book and play, as well as both film adaptations, he either symbolizes or personifies the selfishness of childhood, shown in Barrie's work through constant forgetfulness and self-centered behavior. He has a nonchalant, devil-may-care attitude and is fearlessly cocky when it comes to putting himself in danger. Nothing else to say, right?
Oh boy, something to avoid.
Fun at a party. Fun if a whole group of you were together, right? But not if he's behind the wheel. That's the whole thing. I mean, this is a guy who lives on the edge. He likes adventure. And you can have as many adventures as you want, but if you have adventure with someone who has no fear of danger and really believes that he's so psychic that he can, feel danger and advance. I mean, if you're looking for that kind of a life, again, please don't drag children and pets through it, because it can really be a bloodbath with someone like that.
Absolutely. Now, this is an interesting one, very common. You've told me that there are many men who have a Peter Pan personality, attracts so many women, and often simultaneously. Please explain how this works.
Well, Peter Pan is based in part on Pan, which is a mythological character who had a flute, and Pan was originally based on Krishna, the god of love, who also had a flute, and Krishna was always surrounded by the gopis, the milkmaids, and if you're in a relationship with Pan, you will have the same experience. That was my experience in any case. If you're with a man who's irresistibly gorgeous, which I used to do, and incredibly charming and very successful and also wealthy and so sexy and all that, obviously this is not a guy who you can just sit in a chair and come back 3 hours later. You've got to really pay attention. You've got to really, keep connecting with him and keep attracting him. It's a lot of work. So if that's what you want, which is what I wanted when I was young, it was fun, it was exciting, just understand what you've got. So there will always be a lot of other moths coming around this flame, won't there?
Yes.
Because that's what moths do and that's what flames do.
I'm getting exhausted thinking about a lifetime with someone like this.
Yeah, but the thing about the moth and the flame is a lot of moths get too close to the flame and they die. So the purpose of this show is for you to understand, if you're a moth and you're attracted to a flame, you still have to move back before it's too late. And the only way you can do that, usually, is by seeing a lot of moths dying in the candle.
Yes.
So you see that and you go, oh, wait a second, that could be me. I don't want that to be me. And you're like, I'm walking away.
Ahead of time.
That's right.
Thank you for reminding me of that.
Yes, yes.
Now, when we recall Tinkerbell, who was always jealous of Peter and Wendy, is this a part of the Peter Pan and Wendy syndrome that is so common?
Yeah, it certainly is. And as I said earlier, he was oblivious to her romantic feelings for him. Now, if you sat in the theater, everybody else in the theater was perfectly aware of how she was crazy about him, and she was jealous of Tiger Lily, the Indian princess, and she was jealous of Wendy, and she almost did some awful, awful things that were going to get Tiger Lily and Wendy into a very dead kind of situation. Yeah, so you have to understand, yes, there's a lot of emotional drama around this kind of a person.
And I've met a few of them myself, so
Yes.
I know exactly what
Yes.
you're saying.
Yes.
Ladies, beware. Now, in real life, many men and women become parents even if they're, let's say, not prepared for it. What happens if the father is someone with the Peter Pan syndrome?
Yeah, be prepared, like my friend, to do everything that the child needs and do everything for yourself as well. And if you're able to motivate and inspire him to do more, that's a plus. But don't count on it. That's the thing. There are people you can count on, and that's a few people in your life. And then there are a few, then there are people you can't count on, and that's a lot of people in your life. But think to yourself, do I want the person I'm living with to be the person I can't count on? Does that make any sense to you? Of course not. The person who shares parenting, do I want that to be someone I can't count on? Of course not, because in our country, a father has custodial rights. Unless you can prove that he's a heroin addict and an extremely violent person, it's very difficult to get custody away from either parent. So normally you see mothers who give birth to a child, it's a baby, and now this father who's irresponsible, can't be counted on, may not have any of the stable behaviors you need in someone who has child care behaviors, who is qualified, according to the court system, to get almost 50% custody of a small child. And if this Peter Pan has a lot of money, and I work on a lot of these cases where the Peter Pan has a job, he has a career, he's got money. One of them was even very, very famous, a famous movie star. And just for their own ego, they want shared custody. And you and I know that if this person is not someone you can count on, obviously the baby can't count on him. This is the key problem that you're facing. This is the worst nightmare of any mother. So that's what I want everybody to really be aware of.
And unfortunately, a very frequent one.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Susan. I can see now we're going to take a couple of moments, go into a clip. This is going to be with our dear friend, Reverend Bernard Goodman, and he's going to be discussing his insight into Allison. Please enjoy, and we'll be back for more.
You're going to be doing multiple productions at the same time. They're going to make a tier of, an invisible tier of operation for you, and you're going to be doing multiple projects at the same time, each one on a different tier of operation for whatever the purpose will be for each project. Some will be movies, some will be stage plays, some will be for TV, some will be for entertainment, like in Vegas and Tahoe and stuff like that, on stage. There's going to be at least 1 or 2 New York plays on Broadway that you're going to be involved with. This is not all this year, by the way. 1 or 2 plays in New York you're going to be involved with on Broadway. I don't even know what's there anymore as far as the theaters. You're going to, again, they're saying this again, I don't know what, you're going to be doing something at Carnegie Hall. You know what Carnegie Hall is, right? I actually played in Town Hall, but not Carnegie Hall. You're going to be doing something in Carnegie Hall. You're going to be establishing basically a whole new frontier for entertainment in the world. Bringing in the spiritual energy into whatever productions you're going to be involved with. Now what's going to happen is that, I'm getting lit up here, what's going to be happening is, oh, boy, they're not messing around. They're going to teach you, they want to be cute and say learn you, they're going to be teaching you about spiritual money. And that spiritual money has an energy and a life all its own, and nobody can mess with it. At times it's going to be traveling right through you, out of your hands and into whatever productions they belong to, because the money that will be coming to you will actually be assigned to specific functionalities, and you will know what they are. However they tell you, you will know what they are. They're going to be honoring you. You're going to be at the Academy Awards more than once in your lifetime. You're going to be at premieres, you know, with the red carpet and flash bulbs and all that stuff. And you're going to be wearing this incredible gold dress that glistens. What is that stuff they put on dresses that sort of
those
reflect?
Are paillettes, and then there are sequins.
Maybe, well, no, almost like that.
Those are paillettes.
Okay, whatever they're called. They're paillettes? What are they? They're pies?
P-A-I, it's French.
Piaget. Okay, anyway, he's a psychologist. Anyway, stuff like that with this incredible gold dress that you're going to be wearing at one of these functions. premiere, I think it is. I think I've told you that before because they showed it to me before and now they're showing it to me again. You're going to change your hair again, possibly for a specific movie. That's really, well, one time you're going to have dark hair, black hair. Probably won't change the length of it, but just maybe wavy, because now you look like a tigress, which is what you are. And another time you'll have golden hair like Marilyn Monroe. You're going to be wearing Christian Dior outfits. Are they still around?
Yeah.
Okay. Christian Dior outfits to all these, well, whatever you call them, spectaculars. Whether, I don't know if it's premieres or Academy Awards, I can distinguish because it all looks the same to me as far as, you know, the cameras and the paparazzi and all that nonsense. So I can't tell which is which because they all seem to fit in the same genre, if you will. So you're going to be wearing different costumes in Christian Dior and some other famous names I don't know anything about. In your case, keep breathing, clothes optional will not be an option for you. In your case, keep breathing with clothes on will be your status quo, even when you're in the bathtub. Anyway, but you're doing multiple tiers of production work at the same time, so you're going to be juggling a lot of different things. I guess you call it multitasking or something. But each one will have its own base of operation with regard to its purpose. And the purpose will be very clear to you, and you will be the master of that purpose as they define it for you and give you that title and that ability and that awareness and knowledge. Because it'll be your job to make sure that whatever productions you're involved with, that you are the head of, that it goes the way it's supposed to go, according to God. All right? Not that they're all going to be nice, sweet, production or movies and stuff like that. Some of them will not be very nice, but they will all have very large spiritual messages in them. What they've been calling spiritual Hollywood. Actually, they're saying this, there's no way I would say this, but they're saying is that you and I are actually the beginning of spiritual Hollywood, that they gave me that idea years ago, thinking that someone else was going to be doing it, and I'm just talking about it, but now they're saying that you and I are actually the official. All right, let me see what official is. Any takers? Official?
Official plus.
No, official, so it has to be something with a col. Okay, official actual. The beginnings, the seeds, the seedlings of what they've been calling future Hollywood for years, spiritual Hollywood, that you and Bernard are actually being given the auspice to begin that in ways neither of you will ever believe. We're going to tell you, 2014, you're not going to believe people. You're not going to believe what's going on with you. You're not going to believe who you are. You're not going to believe what you're doing, even while you're doing it. You're going to be so transformed into such a different human, if we can still use that term, that what you're going to find 2014 being for you is a year you will never, ever forget.
You know, what's so fantastic about the work that Bernard does with people is, you know, he was speaking to Allison, this is now a long time ago, and a couple of months ago I worked with her, and she's taken a job at a very important agency in Hollywood, and she's now getting opportunities that she didn't have. She's doing different events, opening nights for movies. She's doing all the hosting part of it. And so she's really kicked her career up a couple of notches in a very short period of time. And she was a child actor, so this is not out of the clear blue sky. And it's so wonderful because Bernard was so encouraging to her in this event and other times when he spoke to her. It made a big difference.
And that's why we love Bernard so much.
He's so supportive and so encouraging to everybody, no matter what, no matter what.
He
Yeah,
can
it's
tell
amazing.
you things that you don't even think about, how empowering you are. Well, thank you, Susan. She's doing well, that multitasking.
He's doing great.
Perfect.
Doing great. Better than ever.
Yay. Well, now getting back to Peter Pan, I know that you've told me that Peter Pan, that Barry has Peter say, to die will be an awfully big adventure. So, which is really unusual, in my opinion, as well, when we think of men who want to have fun forever. Do you see it differently?
Yeah, it's very unusual for someone to be so spiritual that he can see or she can see death as an adventure. That takes a truly enlightened mind. And the fact that Barry was able to write Peter as this guy who could sense danger and make food appear and do all sorts of magical things tells you more about James and Barry, you know, obviously, than we think about, than we know about. So Britain had a huge, huge history in spiritual evolution and spiritual groups. There's so many of them at that time, the turn of the last century, when people in London were very committed to it. Ouija boards were big, seances were big. And so he's made Peter Pan into one of those characters. Very interesting.
Well, that's fascinating, even back then. Well, moving forward, how about this? We know that Michael Jackson saw himself as Peter and naming his retreat Neverland and installing a zoo, amusement park with features the kids could have a good time. And so that if we believe that Michael Jackson was innocent of charges against him, would we say that most adults just do not understand the Peter Pan syndrome?
Yeah, clearly. I mean, there were many, many people who knew Michael and knew him really well. And I was very friendly with the guy who managed his zoo and managed his animals. And the people who knew him really well that I've spoken to were appalled by the charges. They don't believe it was possible, because they don't believe that Michael was a sexual being. That's what the Peter Pan story is all about. You know, sometimes they are, but in certain cases, this is the young version of Peter Pan versus the teenage Lothario, Romeo version. So the young one is like perpetually a child, very, very innocent, and that's certainly what it was for Michael Jackson.
And I'm in agreement with that.
Yes,
Huge
sure.
fan of Michael.
Sure.
And thank you for helping us to get insight into his personality. So
Just a really innocent, childlike behavior.
absolutely. Now, how about this? Does a Peter Pan dad and a Wendy mom often create children in their own image?
Yeah, but remember, with kids, you don't know what you're going to get. So if you're Wendy and you think that you're going to have a little daughter and she's going to help you with all the other children, and you know that's going to be your solution, and that was certainly the solution again in the turn of the last century, where women were having 10 and 15 children. And so if a mother is having 10 children, 15 children, she's expecting the older children to do a lot of her work, and they did. But if you've got a Peter Pan partner, you might have all Peter Pan children, and all of them want to go, you know, fly out the window together and have a good time and live on malted, you know, milks. So be careful, because you never know.
Your influence is huge.
Yeah, but you never know, because it's genetics.
Thank you, Susan. Well, what can parents do if they do see this happening with a child, this natural act of maturing in a teen or a young adult?
Well, I work with a lot of families. So I work with a mother who has a teenager who is not as practical and responsible. And I don't mean anybody particular. I mean, this is a syndrome, a scenario that I've been working in many, many, many times over the last 16 years. Or I can work with the teenager or the child or the young adult just myself without the parent. Or I can work with the father, with a son or a daughter, so that, first of all, we've got to see a parent, at least one parent, has to support this and has to model the behavior that he or she wants his child or teen to develop. It's really difficult. You know, you can't send me your child for, you know, a day, a week, or a month and have me, you know, ship them back UPS transformed. It doesn't work that way. So you want to start evolving. You want to start communicating with your children differently. I'm there to do the training and the support. And then at the end of it, we get young adults who are capable of either graduating from college or getting jobs or keeping jobs, getting promoted, being self-sufficient, self-supporting, no longer taking drugs, no longer having dangerous episodes with alcohol. So all of these adventuresome, irrational behaviors all are part of this potential Peter Pan syndrome that can be transformed.
That's very encouraging. Now, what is possible if you do see that your daughter is attracted to the perpetual, let's say, teenager?
Well, you know, you have to have enough of a relationship with your daughter so that she feels safe to tell you the truth about who she's dating, because that's not a given anymore. Then she has to feel safe to tell you the truth about the behaviors that her boyfriend is demonstrating, and that's certainly not common anymore. You have to be able to communicate with her in a loving and unconditional way so that she doesn't feel judged or criticized. And then you have to be either able to support her in having me do the trainings, or me training you, or working with you and you do the trainings, so that she learns other behaviors. She has to learn basically how to logically analyze whether somebody is going to meet her needs or not. So those are actual tools and skills that I teach.
And that's wonderful, Susan. That can really take away from any upcoming disasters.
Yes, it's all about avoiding disaster. You know, it's great if I can teach you so that you don't have any problems in the future, right? That's so much better than when you find me, or you find out about me, or you call me in the 11th hour. I mean, I'm not saying don't call me in the 11th hour. I'm saying, please, if you could possibly call me in the 8th or the 9th or the 10th hour, it's just easier. It's less excruciating.
Absolutely. Preventive complications.
That's right. Thank you.
Now, can you let us know the most important skill that a teen or young adult may acquire in order to move beyond a relationship like this that could have so many problems?
If the teen develops upper left brain functioning, which is to say logical analysis of facts and figures and dollars and numbers, they will not be with that guy for long. And if you teach them the 4 questions of inquiry, where they have to provide evidence that this is the boy for them, or this is the relationship for them, or this is a safe relationship for someone to be in, or being in a relationship with this guy can have a happy ending. When you teach them that exercise, they're not going to have evidence. They're not going to be able to prove that this is a safe, rational, satisfying place for them to be. And it's amazing how quickly even a young girl or young boy can start to realize, what am I doing here? It doesn't make any sense. I don't want any more of it. It's one thing to teach your kids just say no, and we know that that doesn't work very well. But if you teach your kids why saying yes is dangerous, and what price they are going to have to pay for saying yes, and how they can assess the difference between a time when it's safe to say yes and it's dangerous to say yes, when you have to say no, if you can teach them how to analyze all those different things, then you have a child or a teenager or a young adult who can make safe choices and create a great life. And then your job is done. That's the other point. Then your job is done. You know your job isn't done if terrible things are happening to your child and you're having to bail him and her out of these terrible things. So this is about teaching them everything they need to know So you can have free time and you can go and have a great life as a grown-up.
Very rewarding. Now, it sounds as if there is another fairy tale or children's story that we want to pay attention to. So I'm curious, how can we avoid that? Is that right?
There are so many fairy tales that you've been taught as kids, and you may still be reading them to your children and grandchildren right now, and you just haven't realized the cost. And whether it's Cinderella and the Prince, which we handled 2 weeks ago, and if you start thinking about what happily ever after would look like, that's where you start to be rational. That's where you start to be analytical. That's where you start to be able to make an intelligent decision. And you could tell me any of the stories, and I would really encourage you to look for the facts behind the story before you go charging off on your own to have your, Pee-wee's Great Adventure. Well, we know what happened to, Paul Rubens. So be careful when you have these adventures that you're really focused on making safe choices, please.
It's very important. We get so caught up in things, so, or even double check.
Yes.
Very
Absolutely
nice. Well, my goodness, thank you so much for watching, everybody, our second series and about this reality of all those fairy tales. And we will be bringing you more on this in the future so that you do have some more freedom from fantasy and success in your lives. That would be a gift right there. So as you know, Susan does indeed offer that 1 hour complimentary telephone session and has been doing this for at least 16 years that I know of, probably prior to that.
Now, let me ask you a question. Don't we have more time? Isn't that what I'm saying? That we have more time and we should...
We have a couple more minutes.
Yeah, we should probably talk about something, right?
Okay, that'd be wonderful.
Okay, so...
All right. Let's move forward on, is there something that comes to your mind?
Yeah, of course. You know me. Just wind me up. So one of the big questions that you may be asking yourself after you've watched this show is, at what point would you encourage your child or your teenager or your young adult to get more serious about life? This is a very important question because many of us had real childhoods. But children today don't have that luxury because, frankly, there are more of them competing. So, Harvard isn't a bigger school than it was by much. And Princeton and Yale and all the, the best Ivy League schools and all the, top 10 schools and the Seven Sisters and all that. So if your child wants to get into one of the best colleges in the United States of America, they don't have a childhood really, because everything is going to show up on their college resume. If they want to do something, if they want to be in a club, if they want to volunteer, whatever it is, it's going to show up on their college application. I just saw an amazing movie with Tina Fey called Admission. So if you really want to understand, this is about the admission team at Princeton, and it's hilarious because Tina Fey's in it. So you have to guide your children in such a way. They're too young at 5, 6, 7, and 10, and even 13 to understand what you're saying, but you have to encourage them, knowing full well that by the time they're 16 and 17, the choices they made when they were 6 are going to have a very serious impact. And this is just a fact. It's disappointing, and if you're a parent, you may rail against it, and it's just a fact. There are not a million spots in any of the best schools. And, I went to great schools. I didn't have trouble getting in for many different reasons, but I don't think I could have the same success nowadays because I see what's required. So you've got to guide your children. That means you can't be a Peter Pan. That means even if you're the Wendiest Wendy in the world, You have to be really logical and analytical, and it isn't optional. That's what I want everybody who's a parent or considering being a parent to think about.
Absolutely. Thank you, Susan. That's really a lot of knowledge for people to take in. Reality. Well, now I'd like to share with you how you can enjoy Susan Allan's column, Ask the Love and Relationship Coach. And this is in our Santa Barbara Family Life magazine. It's also now available, of course, online, www.sbfamilylife.com and susanallan.org. And I'd like to give her phone number, 805-695-8405, for that gift of 1 hour complimentary phone call. And now we can go to Susan's email, susan@susanallan.org, or Susan's YouTube, youtube.com/user.com.
No,
User /
it's on the screen, isn't
Susan
it? Yes,
Allan
good.
2001. So there you go. It is
I think for
written
now on,
as
you don't
well.
have to do that. It's on the screen.
Thank you, Fred.
Yes.
He did me a favor. That was a mouthful.
Yes.
Well, now I'd like to just say we're live every Tuesday night. We're here from 8 till 9, and we are going strong in our 9th year. And thank you for all the enjoyment and appreciation you've shared about the guest and the information that comes forth. If you do have questions, concerns, or challenges in your personal, professional life, we really love to hear from you. And you can give us a call, 805-698, what's my number? Wait a minute, 8233. I don't always give it out, but on air I do. Or ggAmore@cox.net. And we also, you can go to check out any of our guests on compassionateconnection.tv. Next week, I'm not quite sure who we're going to have on. It may be our entertaining guest, Ravel Orr. I haven't absolutely confirmed that, so that will be a surprise. And now, to say thank you to a sponsor, Debbie. She has been really wonderful on many levels. This is a Debbie D salon. The information is up. Thank you, Debbie. And right here at our studio, as usual, thank you to Matt, Mark, JP, so many over the years that have been so supportive and cooperative in helping us. And here, our personal TV family, we just enjoy so much. Our director, Fred Winter. We love you, Fred. Thank you for making the show happen. And Tyler Geck, he is our technical support. He's all over, wherever needed. And for our viewers, wishing you all a permanent, continuous, countless, inescapable moments of compassionately connecting. Enjoy.